Hey there, Fletcher from All Things Overlanding here, and today is the final episode of the podcast, Season 7, 2025. So I wanted to answer some questions that I get a lot through my Newbie Overlanders group, which is linked in the description down below, Facebook group, totally free to join, tons of awesome people in it, but as the name suggests, is mostly newer overlanders, right? And people come in there all the time. They say, how do I get started? What gear do I need to buy? What type of vehicle do I need, right? So today I wanted to talk about things to get you into overlanding in 2026. So especially if you are brand new to it, or if you are thinking of getting into it or anything like that, this episode should be really good for you. I'm going to give you some real world tips and tricks to get started in overlanding in 2026. So if you want to learn more about that, stay tuned.
Sandstorm, I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
All right, guys. So as I mentioned in the intro today, I'm talking about ways to get started overlanding in 2026. Now, these can apply to any time. It's not necessarily specific to the year 2026 or anything like that, although everything that I say will be based on my experience up to this point. So, if I do another one of these in a couple of years, things may change a little bit, but based on where I am currently after doing this for probably 6 or 7 years, if my kids heard that, they would freak out. 6, 7. But I've been doing this for a while now, and I've got a fair amount of experience. I'm not by no means an expert, but I do have a fair amount of experience in overlanding and kind of getting out on trips and stuff and being more self-sufficient and reliant on my vehicle. So just wanted to share some tips for those folks that are thinking of getting started overlanding next year. So let's first start with vehicles. That is one of the questions that I see all the time. People post up with their Toyota Highlander that they just bought that's brand new, and they're like, would this be a good vehicle for overlanding, or should I save up and buy a second vehicle, maybe like a beater or something, like an old Cherokee or an old Wrangler or something like that for overlanding? And what I would say regarding vehicle choice is you can go in anything. Right now, it depends obviously on where you live, what kind of terrain you're going to be tackling. If you are in the Ozarks and you plan to hit some of the harder trails, obviously a Highlander is not going to do nearly as well as, say, a modified Tacoma or a modified Frontier or a Jeep Wrangler or, something like that. So if you're looking for something that is more wheeling oriented, you want to hit tougher trails, you want to do some rock crawling, things like that, then obviously you're going to have to pick a vehicle that's suitable for that. However, a lot of overlanding is really long distance travel, right? Especially in the US. Now, if you're out of the country, there are some places where it is all, really off-road, really rugged. So in that case, you may want something that's more capable. But in the US, a lot of it is going to be highway travel from whatever state you live in to the state that you're going to. And then there's going to be some light off-roading, maybe some gravel, fire road type stuff, and then maybe some trails. But a lot of vehicles nowadays, especially with all the technology and the different, all-wheel drive systems and stuff, can do a lot of that stuff. So you may hear a lot of people say, no, get rid of that Highlander, go buy a Tundra, go buy a Tacoma, buy, something else. But one, that's really, it's kind of like saying you don't like it here, move, right? Like, sure, it sounds good in theory, but it's just not like a valid thing to do, right? You can't just go sell that brand new 2026 Highlander that you just bought and get something else. But you can, enjoy your time with that, use it for a few years. And then if you're really, really into overlanding and you discover that you love it and you want to do tougher trails and do more exploring and get to further places, turn that thing into your daily driver. And then you could buy something that maybe is a little bit older with some more miles as sort of a second vehicle that's dedicated for overlanding that you can build out. So that's kind of my thoughts on vehicle. I think that, the vehicle doesn't matter nearly as much as the desire, unless, again, you're tackling really tough terrain. So take what you got, run what you got. That's another thing too. If you're newer to this, don't get sort of bought into the hype on YouTube, on podcasts, things like this, right? Where you feel like you got to go out and you got to buy a $70,000 brand new Tundra. And then you need to spend another $50,000 to $70,000 on modifications like camper shells, caps, traction boards and winches and recovery, like all this stuff, right? There is a ton of gear that you can buy, but you want to make sure that you're really into it, that you enjoy the camping aspect of it, you enjoy the solitude, right? That you enjoy the exploration piece of it. There's a lot of things that you need to sort of test out and make sure that you like. And having a reliable vehicle is also super important. So having something that's newer, that's maybe less, perfect for off-roading, but that will be reliable and get you there and not break down on you, not leave you stranded, is also equally important. I'll give you a good example. When I first started doing this, I had an older Xterra. It was probably about 12, 13 years old when I bought it. Had about 100,000 miles on it. It was super reliable. But there were a few times where my battery died and I was out in the middle of nowhere. Then I learned to get jump starters, right? I started to have jump starters in the truck. So just in case I would have that, because I was trying to run my fridge off of my starter battery, which I upgraded to an AGM, a deep cycle battery that did better, but then I still killed it a couple times. So having an older vehicle, there are some risks that come with that. So you got to think about that stuff. That is why now I drive a 2023 Frontier, because I've had older vehicles and I've kind of had problems with them along the way. For the most part, they were really reliable, but there's just been one thing or another that happens. And I'm like, man, I really just want that reliability. I want something that's newer so that I can enjoy it more and not have to worry about whether the vehicle is going to start or whether I'm going to break an axle or that kind of thing. So definitely just consider all those things when you're thinking about your vehicle. But to start, especially if you're brand new, take what you got, go out, even if it's a car, right? Like if you have a Prius or something and you want to get started, I know several people that run Priuses and they do fine for a lot of stuff. Again, you're not going to go tackle Moab in it, right? But that's okay. That's not even really overlanding. That's wheeling, right? So you got to separate those two things in your mind. What is wheeling versus what is overlanding? And again, overlanding is getting out away from people, dispersed camping, being reliant on your vehicle. That's more what that is. It's not necessarily about proving to anyone that your vehicle is bigger and badder and can go anywhere. So just keep that in mind. All right, so next, let's talk about gear, right? So what gear do you need to go overlanding? And a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on this. A lot of people say that you need to have recovery, you need to have first aid, you need to have all this stuff. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying really think about the things that mean, life or death out there. Communication is important. So having some sort of comms is important, but you can also go out somewhere where you're going to lose reception, but let people know before you go. And then you don't necessarily have to have it. Is it better to have some sort of like a Garmin InReach or something that you can communicate off grid, or maybe a Starlink to connect you if you needed to get connected to people? Of course. But if you're going to your local national forest and you're going to be 20, 30 minutes from a town, out dispersed camping, you tell people where you're going to go and your phone is being tracked by GPS anyways and your location shared with your loved ones, then you're probably going to be okay. And as long as you're not taking unnecessary risks, you should be fine. As far as recovery goes, also very important, right? I would definitely recommend getting recovery gear sooner than later, but it's not like you have to go out and buy everything. You don't need to mount a winch and a winch bumper and get traction boards and get, all this stuff, but have the basics, right? So have like a recovery strap and maybe a couple of soft shackles, maybe a couple of hard shackles. Make sure that your vehicle has recovery points. If it doesn't, but it has a hitch, they make these things that stick into the hitch that have a D-ring attached to them so that you can be recovered from the rear. Check the front of your vehicle. Does it have a hook that you can use to tow? If your vehicle does, but it's one of those optionals that you kind of have to remove a part of your bumper and screw it in, make sure that's in the vehicle, right? Like simple stuff. You don't have to go crazy and put steel bumpers on everything, but make sure that you know how to recover your vehicle, that you know your recovery points on whatever vehicle that you have before you go. First aid is one of those things where it is very important, right? You at least want to have a basic first aid kit. Just in case. I've gone on a trip. I'll give you a perfect example. I cut my finger. I did this recently again. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this big cut on my finger there. But if you cut yourself out there and you don't even have basic stuff like Band-Aids, some antiseptic wipes, that kind of thing, it can end your trip really quick. If you can't stop the bleeding, you got to get out of there and go somewhere where you can take care of it. So having just even a basic first aid kit is really nice and definitely something that I would recommend. And then you got to just think of things in terms of like survival, right? You need some sort of a tent or a shelter, whether that's sleeping in your vehicle, whether it's a hammock, whether it's a ground tent, whether it's a rooftop tent. It doesn't really matter what it is. You don't have to go out and spend $3,000 on an expensive rooftop tent before you can ever go camping. Go out with the $50 Coleman tent that you've had for 10 years sitting in your garage. Try it out, right? Go in safe conditions. Don't go in -20. If you're not prepared for cold weather, go when, the conditions are safe, where you know where you're going and you have at least an idea and you let people know where you're going. But you need some sort of shelter. You're going to need some sort of food, whether that is picking up a sandwich at a gas station or, getting some sort of freeze-dried meals or bringing steak and mashed potatoes and a bunch of stuff to cook. But then you have to think about the complexity and all the other stuff that you need to cook that stuff. So again, start simple. Take prepackaged food, take some cold meat sandwiches or something in a cooler. And that's a great way to get started. You don't need to go buy a fridge. You don't need to buy a second house battery. You don't need to buy a DC to DC charger that you can keep your battery charged and do all this complex stuff. just get started with what you got. Go out there, see what you think, see how you like it. Fire starting, not necessarily a necessity, but again, super easy, right? Like bring just a Bic lighter and some fire starters with you and be prepared to collect some firewood if you can do that where you live. Where I live in Indiana, it's really easy. There's wood everywhere, right? I never really bring wood with me. I always go out there and I just collect stuff off the ground and then I have a fire. So that is a really nice to have. But one of the things that I like about camping and getting away is sitting around that fire. To me, that's a kind of a necessity. It's almost if I can't have a fire, if it's pouring down rain and I can't have a fire, kind of kills the fun for me a little bit. So that's something to think about and just be aware of. And then of course, water, right? And fuel. So carrying liquids on you, having water that you need, which again, whether it's a couple of bottles of water because you're going to be out there for one night in a cooler, whether it's a 5-gallon jug or something like that if you're going to be out there longer. Then same with fuel. Make sure that you've got enough fuel to get out to the dispersed spot where you're going to go and back. Same with if it is winter and you're running like a diesel heater, you're going to need diesel fuel. So there's all these different conditions that change everything, but the basics remain the same, right? Shelter, food, water, fuel, and some sort of first aid, really important. If you're going solo too, again, letting people know where you go is important, but having ways to self-recover is important. As I became more and more of a solo overlander, I did mount a steel bumper on my truck. I did mount a winch on there. I got myself stuck once or twice by myself, and with the winch, it was kind of a lifesaver. I was able to pull myself out and self-recover. That is important if you're going to be going solo a lot. So think about those types of trips, right? Are you going with friends all the time? Because in that case, all you probably need is a recovery strap and a couple of shackles, right, to attach it to recovery points. If you are never going with friends and you're always going solo, then a winch becomes a little more important. Traction board's a little more important because you want to be able to self-recover, a shovel, that kind of thing. But again, none of it's necessary. You can go out on gravel roads. You can go find a dispersed camping spot nearby. You don't have to go 6 hours into the bush to find a spot, right? At least not where I live. So definitely be thinking about all those things, terrain, whether you're solo, whether you're going in group, and then think about those basics of shelter, food, whatever. So then finally, let's wrap this last episode of the year up with kind of my final thoughts, which are going to be about your desire, right? Like, what do you want to do? And I don't think a lot of people talk about this. Everybody always talks about vehicles. They always talk about gear, and those things are definitely important. They make a huge impact on how your trip is going to be, right? But I think you need to think about, like, what are your goals, right? Like, a lot of people just watch videos and they're like, oh my gosh, I just watched the Story Till Now do this epic journey through 4 feet of snow up into the mountains and camp on top of this mountain. And he's got a Hemi swapped, Jeep Wrangler or Jeep Gladiator. And he's got all this cool stuff. And like, I want to do that. And of course, we all want to do that aspirational stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But think about it realistically. Like, again, I live in the Midwest. Even though I have a YouTube channel and I love all that epic stuff and I've gone to Wyoming and I've done some epic stuff, most of my trips are camping trips. If we're being fully transparent here, most of the time what we're going to do is camp out of our vehicles, right? We're not necessarily going to go overlanding. If we're lucky, we might get 2 or 3 days. If you're really lucky, you might get a week or 2 weeks. If you don't have a job or you can work remotely and you can do like a month or 2 at a time, that's amazing. Then you're really, really overlanding. But think about that desire, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to quit your job, work remotely and like go on the road and sell your house? Because that's a different thing than saying I have a truck that I want to take camping once or twice a month, right? So you just want to think about that level. Think about how often you're really going to go. Like, again, I love this stuff. I love doing it. And I'm lucky if I can get out once a month, sometimes twice. So, when you really think about that and you break that down, if you get out once a month, that's 12 trips a year. And most of those trips, at least for me, are 1 or 2 nighters, maybe 3 nights if I'm really lucky. So that being said, then, does it make sense to totally modify your vehicle, lift it, put giant tires on it, kill your gas mileage, put a bunch of gear on it that you have to worry about theft, you have to worry about damage to this stuff, you have to worry about, being top heavy and just being dangerous in normal conditions or high winds. So think about that stuff. Think about your desire and what your goals are. If it's just to go camping, that's totally fine. There's no judgment here, right? I'm not saying that one is the right way and one is the wrong way at all. I'm just saying if that's your thing, then in that case, you may not want to get a super huge, super lifted, giant tired truck, right? If you don't need a truck and you just want to go camping, you don't necessarily need to buy a Tundra or a Titan or a Silverado or whatever, right? You don't need to buy a big full-size vehicle. If you would prefer like a wagon or something, that works. Get a Subaru, right? You could get a Subaru that's going to get, mid to high 20s gas mileage wise, that's going to be pretty capable, that's going to be reliable, right? Like there are so many options to do that stuff. So you really got to think about like, what are my goals? What is my desire? What am I trying to do with this? Am I trying to go, live out of my vehicle, or am I trying to go camping a few times a month? So think about that stuff, and then align your gear goals and your vehicle goals with that, right? And again, don't rush into anything. That is one of the biggest things. I did it. I've done it my whole life, but I'm trying to help you guys save time and save money, right? I went out and bought this Xterra, and before I even found the Xterra that I wanted to buy, I had tires sitting in the garage, I had wheels sitting in the garage, I had all of this gear sitting there ready to go. And then before I ever even went on a trip, I'd modified the bejesus out of this thing, tanked my gas mileage, made it worse in some ways, right? And that's really easy to do because you get excited and you want to have those big bad rigs like everybody else. So just think about that stuff, right? Think really hard and long about what you want to do, why you want to do it, what kind of camping you like. Are you a hammock camper? Are you a tent camper? Do you want a rooftop tent? Do you mind climbing up and down the ladder, but it gets you off the ground? It's a little bit cleaner, neater, nicer, quicker, and easier to set up, but it has a higher expense with it. And you have the downside of having to have a rooftop tent on your thing all the time. Think through all that stuff and just make sure that you're really thinking about it and planning before you just go out and start buying stuff. So that'll do it for this episode. Again, this is the final one of season 7 of 2025. So just want to say a quick thank you to all of you that listen, all of you that watch on YouTube. In 2026, I've got big goals to, continue to grow the channel, to do more and more trip videos, that kind of thing. I'm hoping to get to more expos and stuff next year. So hope to see you guys at some of those events, and hope that you'll follow along. Make sure to click that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Click the like button if you're on YouTube and you enjoyed the video. If you're on the podcast, leave a 5-star review. That is huge, helps so much, and I really appreciate you guys. If you enjoy the content, if you're getting value out of it, thank you for the emails that some of you send that say, hey, thanks, this really helped me. Leave a 5-star review. That tells everybody else like, hey, this podcast is good, and it helps a ton. As always, there are links in the description down below to all my social channels. So if you want to come join the conversation on Facebook or Instagram, see the pictures and stuff that I do, definitely consider following along over there. That newbie Overlanders group that I mentioned is also linked down in the description below. Fantastic place, whether you're new or experienced. It's just a much more positive place than a lot of the bigger groups. So we'd love to have you there as well. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a join button below this video. That's just a passive way to sort of support the channel. You get early access to the videos, you get some other perks, and it's just a nice way to say, hey, thanks for the videos. I appreciate them. I'm getting value out of them, right? If you want to be more involved with all things overlanding, there's also a link to my Patreon down below, which is a ton of fun. We've got 20 plus folks in there now. We have a 24/7 Discord. We do a once a month Zoom call, and we're getting together. We've just this year in 2025, we've already done 2 trips, and we're planning a 3rd one for early 2026. And it's been a ton of fun to get to meet everybody in person and hang out and camp and spend time together. So if that sounds good, check out the Patreon. And then other than that, there is a link to my website down below where you can get stickers and patches, funny things like don't burn your wiener and it's a hot dog, or I hate people so I camp. So again, if you're getting into overlanding and you don't want to go spend thousands of dollars, but you want to kind of rep a little bit that you're into overlanding, patches and stickers are a cheap, easy way to get into it. So check those out. Again, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys have a wonderful new year, and we'll see you next year.